Ladies and gentlemen, this is 2 years in the making. I just wanna let you know that the District 2 is so proud, so honored. This is prestigious, and now let me tell you something, Greg, I'm a little bit nervous today because of this gentleman that we're having on today. I mean, I don't know if we're gonna pass the test or not. I just wanna say this, he's had every job in the world, I can tell you that. And, he's been a weekend reporter, he's been a sideline reporter, he's been an anchor. He is an anchor, he's a director. But I'm gonna tell you this, Greg, the man nobody that I know of has a better intro to their bio than "just like butter." Let's get on a roll with Jermaine Ferrell from WFXR. Jermaine, we cannot thank you enough for joining us today. And I know it's been 2 years. I have bugged this man, Gregory. I just need to tell you this. I have bugged this man for 2 years since I met him at the Northside GW basketball game to please come on. And hey, it's a busy fellow. So, Mr. Farrell, thank you so much. I appreciate everything you do.
Appreciate you too. It is like y'all are scraping the bottom of the pudding cup to want me on your show. So that's it's, I mean,
Listen,
there's so many people that are much more worthy than I am. But I appreciate you guys taking the time. Sorry it's taking so long. It's that sometimes, when we're all busy doing things and trying to get everything done, but we finally got it accomplished. So it's
absolutely.
an honor to be on the District 2 Sports because you guys do a good job at covering sports too. So congratulations on what you guys are doing.
Well, thank you. And listen, I want to start this off in a little bit of a different kind of mode, and I'm gearing this towards you, okay? So, and this is, and I wanted to read something, and I wanted to get. I kind of know the background, but I would like to get you personally to reveal it yourself. Therefore, since we have been justified through faith, we have peace with God through our Jesus Christ, through whom we have gained access by faith into this grace in which we now stand. And we boast in the hope of the glory of God. Not only so, but we also glory in our sufferings because we know that suffering produces perseverance, perseverance, character, and character, hope. And hope does not put us to shame because God's love has been poured out into our hearts through the Holy Spirit who has been given to us. I took that specially from your page, and I know it's a little bit of a variation since I'm reading from the not the King James Bible, but the New Improved Version. I wanted to get your comment on that, Jermaine.
I mean, the thing is, well, I think it's self-explanatory. And anytime, you know, first of all, one for our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, and we wouldn't be where we are today. And I always give credit to Him because He's the one that makes everything possible. And I just think it's a blessing, first of all, that the Lord gives you 24 hours in a day. So what you do with those 24 hours. Because the thing is, it's not like money you can carry over. Let's say you can't carry over that time to the next day. You have 24 hours, so but it's a blessing in what you said. And completely honest, I forgot that was but no, it's just like I said, it's a blessing. And there's so many outlets out there to deliver the word, to deliver whether it's a spiritual word, a sports word, a news word. I mean, when this whole thing started, I mean, when you think about the infancy of broadcasting and really journalism as a whole, it started with newspaper, really.
Right.
Then it was like newspaper and radio, and then this thing called television came around. So then you had radio, newspaper, and television, and then obviously social media has gotten out there, and everyone has their podcast. And the thing is that, there's options. There's more options out there than ever before. So it's how you digest your news. But I also tell people you have to be careful where you get it from. You have to be real careful because, not everyone is speaking, pardon my language, the gospel, as they say. But you have to be careful, whether it's Facebook, X, or, TikTok, all that. But there's different ways. It used to be growing up as a kid, you know, you'd wait for 6 o'clock or 11 o'clock to get your news on TV. You'd listen to news on the radio. You would wait to get the paper, which, if you have a morning paper, it's everything happened yesterday. Now, you read a paper and it's more online than getting a print copy. and everyone's kind of going away from print because we have a digital outlet. You can go on there and everybody wants to know the news now. Everybody, it's got to be instant. And that's what's really important because that's where we are heading. We're already there where we can go over. But obviously, TV has its place. TV will never go anywhere. You know, the print media's had to reimagine themselves. And it used to be when, the internet came out there, they were like, we don't want to deal, we don't want to do that. But now it's like you have to join forces with your websites and everything like that. And then radio, they have their place in the news and broadcasting industry, and there's different outlets there. But now it's almost like podcast now, and it's Facebook and all these social media outlets. That's where people are going for the information. And so, but it's very important to get the accurate information. I mean, one thing we pride ourselves at WFXR is that we're all about accuracy. We're all about getting the story right. And the thing is that there's so many people, I would rather be right and late than wrong and early because everybody's just so ready to get the scoop, to get the news out. And a lot of times it's not right, it's not accurate. So that's really the biggest thing that you have to have that, because it takes years to build up a great reputation, but it could be torn down like that. And that's really the big thing with that.
I really love the way you promote yourself on your bio or in your bio as well as online. Husband, father, grandfather, uncle, Army veteran, and believer. And so let me tell you, we thank you for your service to this country and also for your service with the Lord Jesus Christ. But I paid particular attention to something that, we were going to get into all your sports goods and everything here shortly, but I paid attention to a favorite quote. And, my boys, they always say, "Oh, dad, he had this quote for this." I can't even repeat what I said about 20 years ago to these boys online for them messing around with my baseball game because I'm a huge baseball lover. But I love this, and I'll let you dig into this a little bit and get the background. A winner never quits, and a quitter never wins. Somebody special in your life said that, I think.
Yeah, that was something my dad said to me a lot. And I remember, God rest his soul, he passed away in 2008. And he was such an impactful person in my life. But I remember I was running, I ran track for Patrick Henry. It was my senior year. He was there. And really with both my parents, my mother, Catherine Farrell, my dad, Julius Farrell Sr. And there's two stories. There's a story with each of it. But I remember it was a regional championship track meet. I came in second in the high jump, and I really wanted to win the thing for Pop. And he said, "Did you give it your all? Did you do everything you need to do?" And I said, "Yes, I sure did." Well, then that's all you have to worry about because a winner never quits and a quitter never wins. And then I think it was actually that same year in the spring season, and this was even funny. So we're running against Franklin County, and I'm out there with my head about as big as the moon or whatever it is. And I had this ego, and I ran almost cocky for this meet because I knew it was a meet we could win, and we did, handily. And I ran the 800-meter relay, but I ran it in a manner that you should never run. You should never take off, try to show up some. And so I'm like out there just having a ball with it, being cocky and arrogant. And then, my mom got into me, said, "That's not how you act." And it was a quote that our track coaches say. Say you compete with pride and win with class, which some my mom always told me too. And we just didn't do things the right way. At that moment, I did. So really it's been impactful to me to have parents that teach you the right from wrong and do the right thing and respect and love everybody. And that's really the biggest thing that I would tell anybody, is to have good role models. And, role models are important to have. And we've had them, growing up. And that's really the biggest thing. But I would say that to anybody. I mean, that's what it is. I mean, if you think about it, if you quit, you're not going to win. But when you win, you're not necessarily a quitter. So it kind of goes in a circle. So that's one big thing that has impacted me in my life is this. And that's what I go with, whether I'm at work or my home life or anything like that. Is that you have to have that mentality. And if you don't have that mentality, you're not gonna have success. Because it's easy to quit. It's easy to just say, "I don't think Imma do it." But it's also but you know what? It's not necessarily easy to win. You know, when we've talked to coaches, and a lot of them, they they don't take time to enjoy the win, but they suffer through the loss. Like, the loss is the worst thing in the world, which it isn't. Let's use Tony, Bennett for an example. When they lost to UMBC, they were the first number 1 to lose to a 16, and you talk about a person that handled it in about as in a classy way as you could. That interview that he did, with what's her name, but you know who she is. But anyway, the sideline reporter, and that was about as classful as a way you could do that. And so what he said, he talked to the players, said, "Hey, this is going to be one of the toughest things you'll ever do." And he went out there and they did the interview and they handled it with grace. And he said, "Joy will come in the morning." And that was something that stayed with me. And then the following year, of course, they won the national championship, and that road wasn't easy for them to win that national
Nope.
championship. But you talk about the one of the big redemption stories. That was a redemption story to go from that, the lowest of the lows to the highest of the highs. That's something that they can never take away from you. That is something that they will never be able to do. And I always thought that was just such a big time thing what they did, and a lot of people can learn from that, and I think it's true. You can learn probably more from a loss than a win. I mean, let's say you don't play that well, but the biggest thing is you learn something. You could it's probably easier to teach people things. You got the win, but hey, here are the things that could have cost us this game. And a lot of times people just say, "Oh, we won the game. It doesn't matter," but how you win. And when you lose, though, you know you didn't do enough to get the victory, and a lot of times you learn more from that loss. So I've always felt that you learn when times are hard, when times are difficult. I think you see people's true character a lot of times because you know when everything is great and there's sunshine and rainbows and gumdrops and everything. I mean, no problems in the world. But when you go through adversity, you go through tough time. We've all gone through adversity. It's what you learn from that adversity. How do you take it? And I think a lot of times we have to learn from our errors and learn from our mistakes to not repeat them again. So that's really the biggest thing with that.
Jermaine, how much does your military background help you in everyday life? I know that you had a pretty important job as well in the military, so I think you were responsible for some people's pay. I think.
Yeah, you gotta make sure the soldiers get paid. That's one of the most important one there's things you don't mess with. You don't mess with a soldier's money. I mean, that's like number one, triple star with a bullet. But military shows you discipline. The biggest thing is, like, and things that happen here are nothing compared to when you're in the military because you're dealing with people's lives and people protecting the country, and that's very important. But it teaches you that things are not as bad as they seem because there's a lot of danger when especially you're a soldier, you're out in the combat unit and doing all that. So I think the biggest thing is it teaches you how to be, you know, disciplined. Discipline is one of the biggest things you can take from this. If you're disciplined, then anything's happen. In the military, like I went in the military, I was 18 years old, straight out of high school, didn't know, a lot of things, but then, you get that experience, and I was in there for nearly a decade, and it taught me how to be responsible and respectful. So that's really the biggest thing with that is responsibility, discipline, and all those things.
Mr. Farrell, when you kind of transitioned from that military life, you can certainly make a career out of that, but you left that to kind of pursue sports broadcasting. What was that? And what went into that decision? And was there a certain game or a certain point, maybe a certain time where you're like, hey, this is exactly what I want to be doing right here, covering sports?
I really wanted to go into broadcast when I was a kid. And the funny thing is, when I was a kid, I would grab the Roanoke Times and World News at the time, is what it was called. I would pretend to do the news, sports, and weather because there was all those sections in the paper. And I would read it from my grandma and my mom, my sisters. and my brother, and I would pretend to do the news for them. And it was just one of those things. It was funny. They had pointers. I would rip the antenna off a TV because it would extend, and I pretend I was a pointer and use it as a weather map. And so I've always had an interest in broadcasting. And then obviously you get older. And what's neat is I always thought it was neat. People say you want to know how the sausage is made. A lot of times it's neater to see how things are done and how it's made. And that was really impressive to me, was just seeing how it was done, seeing how it was made. And I think when you get in front of the camera, you know, yeah, you only see us, people see us, oh, you're only up there for a couple minutes, but really, to be honest, it takes hours. It's kind of like a TV show. TV show is 30 minutes, like you have a 30-minute sitcom or hour drama, but it takes hours to put together anything. And for us to do our shows, it takes hours. This is not something we just throw together. And then there's long form planning. But I knew that was something I was interested in. And it's really been a rewarding experience because I've got to meet so many great people, share the story of these kids and these young people, and just say, hey, here's where this is, here's where that is. So I really learned a lot in the time that I have been doing this. And you meet some great people and you interact with so many great people. So it's really been a rewarding experience. And it's something I probably want to do since, I was a youngin'. So I was a little guy out there doing my thing. So it's been a rewarding experience.
I wanna ask you, you've been out in Texas, you've been in Richmond, been in Roanoke. What's the football life, in Texas and Richmond and compared to Roanoke where you've been, grew up in and have covered the last few years?
Well, I tell you what, Friday Night Lights, the movie Friday Night Lights, a TV show, that's pretty much spot on. They'll have signs in the front yard. I've seen moving trucks for a football coach if they don't win. I'm not saying football is not passionate in Virginia. Texas, I mean, it's almost like a religion out there because they really, I mean, they do pregame shows and they do hour-long postgame shows, and they just do that, and the radio people are out there, and cities shut down. I mean, the smaller communities in Texas, cities do shut down, and they do here to an extent here, but in Texas, it's just they put the fan in fanatic, it seems like. And the highest paid person in a community is the head football coach. They make more than probably the mayor, the superintendent, all that, because some of those stadiums out there, colleges would love to have stadiums like that. I mean, these are like they will spend money on a stadium. Some of the most expensive high school football stadiums are in Texas. Multi-million dollar stadiums, seats 20,000, which a lot of times that's not even enough seats. So they really take it here. Richmond is a passionate area too. Roanoke area is here. So really, it's all about perspective. I wouldn't say one area is better than the other when it comes to passion. I think fans are going to be passionate about their schools and their teams. You know, when you look at a population, like in the Richmond area, obviously the schools are bigger for the most part, so there's going to be a bigger pool of players to pick from. Same in the 757 in Northern Virginia. But I will say this, I think athletes that are here in the 276 and the 540 and the 434, they can hold their own against teams over there too. So that's really the biggest thing. I don't think one area is bigger than the other, but it's all about where you are. Like obviously, everybody's going to think their area is the best area for football, and that's fine, or sports. But it's all about perspective, and a lot of times on any given day, anybody can beat anybody. And this part of the state, we've had our fair share of state champions in sports. So, but obviously, the population shift, which again, it seems like every year there's a new school in Northern Virginia. I mean, there's just the population, and really back in the day, the population has dwindled because I remember going to fo- you know, like our football practices, you would have maybe 150 kids out there. But nowadays, you don't see as many football players practicing. I've gone to some practice. I'm not going to mention the schools, but the practices you don't see as many players. You got a lot of players playing both ways. And the thing is, it's all about population. I mean, using Pulaski County as an example, they were a they would be what's considered back then it's triple A back then, but back then they were divisions, so they'd be Division 6. So there was a lot of population, and as time progressed, the populations have dwindled. People have moved away from these communities. We've had a lot of consolidation of high schools because of the fact that there's the population. And so you don't have as many kids, which in essence, if you don't have that many kids, it's hard to really pull from a pool of athletes. So that's a trend that has happened. You don't have as many to pull from. So that's really one of the things when you look at high school sports is that, obviously young people might have different interests and that's okay, but you don't probably see as many kids. It used to be back in the day, kids would, you know, my mom in the summertime would say, "Hey, I don't want to see you till the sun comes down, or you got the street lights coming on, you got to be there at a certain time." But you don't see a lot of kids out there, playing in the street, playing street football. Not that I'm endorsing it, but you have a big field, for grabbing a basketball and going out there and playing ball or, heck, we would play baseball sometimes. We play stick ball. We do all those things, but you don't really see that. And I think a lot of it has to do with technology. You have all different interests. So it's all about perspective and all that. But like I said, these kids are out there battling. They're battling. I mean, and we've seen a lot of great state championships over the years. And, we will have this area will have more state champions. So but it's all about the talent and what's going on with that.
Jermaine, I'm gonna ask. I know that you've been, in broadcasting for over 20 years now, and the sports director there at WFXR since January of 2019. And I know I know you got the biggest pull of the group since you're the director. So, what determines where Jermaine Ferrell winds up? And the reason why I ask you that is, what determines you going to and we seeing you at the Northside GW basketball game 2 years ago, you covering the NCAA national championship and on NCAA football level and of the ACC basketball tournament, men's or women. What goes into determining where you go?
I mean, that's all about staffing and manpower and all of that. I mean, football season, like for Friday Night Blitz, Hardy's Friday Night Blitz, which we're getting ready to celebrate our 10th season of Hardy's Friday Night Blitz. What we do with that is, typically I'll stay close by and we'll send everybody else out there. A lot of times, and when we have bigger events, and anyone on my team could cover whatever. I will go cover, state basketball down in Richmond, or I'll cover, you know, uh, if there's a ACC championship or the ACC tournament or something like that, I'll usually go to that. But that doesn't mean, anyone in our team could cover it. So we just have that. But I think the biggest thing is that, the coverage is important because people want to know what's going on. So it's not an exact science. We just say, hey, I might say, hey, you go cover this or you cover that, or I'll grab it and cover it. So I will tell you this, I wouldn't have someone do something that I wouldn't be able to do. So that's really the biggest thing. And there's not like an exact science. It's not like, okay, Jermaine's going to do this, Ryan's going to do this, Miriam's going to do this. That's just not how it is. It is like we'll sit down and we see what we can get to, what we can cover, and what we can get to. Because no, all games are important. It doesn't matter if you have a game over here or a game over there; they're all important. But a lot of times it's just about logistics. It's about manpower. It's about what you can get to, and that's really, where we stand with that.
That's fair. I want to ask you. I was looking at your page, and you
By the way,
use a lot.
I'm sorry. I'm just getting text in, so I'm not ignoring you. It's just
Oh, you're
again,
fine. Yeah,
guys, keep getting the text. I'm
you're
not. I want you to think I'm not hearing from you.
you're the director. I understand that. Just covering sports in general, like I look on your page, and you're covering AEW. You're talking NHRA. I think it's the drag racing. Of course, basketball, football, baseball.
Mhm.
How much prep goes into these interviews? Or is this something that you watch on the side, like to get familiar with, or how much prep goes into these interviews before you do them?
Well, you gotta be prepared. You can't just go in there because then if you ask a question, you might look like an idiot. So yeah, you gotta have preparation. I think whatever you're doing, you want to be prepared. I don't think you go in there blindly. A lot of times, a lot of times when you're doing interviews, the interviews that you do the biggest thing is the interviews that we do are prepared. Now, I think a lot of times some of your best interviews are conversation. They're not necessarily. I think if it's something like case in point, let's say if I'm doing a story on, I'll use an example. There's a story I did recently. It's about the Roanoke Star, Mill Mountain Star. And I talked to one of the historians in Nelson Harris, who was the former mayor of Roanoke. And rather than asking him, hey, give me the full history of the Mill Mountain Star and da da da, I could do that. I could look all that up. I could find that out. But it's more, you have to make it humanized. So you ask, hey, when you bring someone to Mill Mountain and they're on that overlook, what do they think of that? Like, how do they look at that? That's a different way of doing it, versus tell me your life story, because then that's not really a conversation. You know, when you do interviews, you want them to be conversation. You don't really want to be one sided or anything like that. You never want to do the I got you questions because I don't, I'm the type of broadcaster and journalist where if I'm asking, let's say I'm asking James Franklin a question at Virginia Tech, if you're a fan, I mean, if you're a diehard, if you ask a question, hey, who's going to be what's the depth chart and who's going to do this, who's going to do that? Yeah, you're hardcore, but if you want to get in those non-traditional fans, I would ask coach questions like, hey, so what do you like doing away from the game? Like, what are some of the things you enjoy away from the sport? Because these are humans too, you know, and it's like, I've never been a fan of asking like nuts and bolts questions. Now, if you ask a question like, hey, what do you think the key will be to beating BMI in the opener? That's different than asking a question like, so break down the VMI defense. I mean, it's just sometimes it just goes over people's heads. Or you could ask like, oh, so what? I mean, or you could ask, hey, this is gonna be your first experience with Inner Sandman. You've seen it from afar. I mean, how fired up are you to do that? It's like human interest questions. And I'm not knocking my print brothers and sisters or broadcast brothers and sisters who ask those type of questions. But I would like to know what makes a person tick. Human interest. You know, like, do you take your kids to school? What do you guys do in the morning? Like, what's your breakfast? Things like that, that viewers who might not necessarily be sports fans probably would be interested. And that's how you bring in your non-traditional sports fans. If you make the people you're interviewing human, and if you make them into an interesting subject, that's what makes it count.
I've listened to a few of the Heart of the Game podcast episodes. If you ever leave TV, is that something you're going to do full time? Pursue the podcast?
I mean, I don't know what the future is. Like I said, the industry's changing. That's why, we're doing a lot of those podcasts because that's what we're doing. In fact, after I'm done with you guys, I'm doing a Heart of Game episode we'll air later with Eden Bigham. And if you guys are familiar with her, she was a standout softball player at Russellburg, won a state championship. I mean, her mom was the coach, which was pretty neat. She goes on to have a stellar career at the University of Virginia, and she's helping little kids, coaching little kids, softball. I think she told me she's going to be an assistant coach, softball coach at the University of Lynchburg. But she's giving back to the game in that way. And it's just hence Heart of the Game. It's a show which will air on WFXR Plus. It's a show where we give back. I mean, it gives you an opportunity to give back to the community and just talk about these kids, you know. And like I said like on one of our promos, I said, hey, these kids are like my kids. I mean, I'm old enough to be their dad. And it's just neat to see these kids succeed. I mean, I hurt for them when they lose. Like when they go down there for a state championship game and they don't win it. I mean, it's tough and it's hard for that, but, you know, again, it's all about making them human. You see them on the field, you see them score a touchdown, hit a three-pointer, hit a home run, but again, what makes them tick? And yeah, I mean, that's something down the line to consider. I mean, the podcast world, I mean, heck, there's so many out there. You have to do something to stand out. But there's a lot of them out there, and there a lot of them are good ones too.
I wanted to ask you. I mean, we talked about it earlier, like news or just media wanting to be the first, get things out there as soon as possible, and make sure you're accurate. But do you see more media maybe changing to that more about storytelling, telling stories about who people are, and maybe what things used to be back in the day with paper.
Well, I think that's something that'll never go away. Storytelling is so important. I don't think you'll never not have storytelling because if you have to share someone's story. I'm a firm believer that when we share someone's story, like when we interview people, they at that moment, they should be the most important person at that moment. We have, I can't tell you how many times I've interviewed people, but I just want to treat people the way I want to be treated. Like I'm not an I got, hey, we're going to story about this. And a lot of times when you interview people, one thing when I started out, I used to write out all my questions. And again, it comes back to a conversation. You don't, you, they might say something which could lead to another question. Like, let's just say if I ask a certain question, but then they give me the answers to my other questions. I could tell you right now, I usually, and the key is just to listen to what they say. God gave you two ears and one mouth. And you got to use these when you do an interview because they might say something like, oh, well, that's interesting. So, what exactly do you mean by this? And then you just keep the conversation going because you want clarification and understanding. But I will say this, I mean, some of your best interviews, like now, I don't script my interviews. I kind of know what I want to say because again, it's conversation. So I never like script my questions, but because going into the interview, I do have an idea. Now, I'm not saying that's wrong. I mean, you see people do big interviews and they have like a whole notepad of questions and notes. Nothing wrong with that. Like I've seen if you're interviewing someone and you're doing a 3 hour interview, which if you're interviewing for someone for 3 hours, that's a little much. But I try to first of all, hey, just break the ice, shoot the breeze, talk a little bit, and then as time progresses, okay, we get into the interview. Because at the end of the day, we have to get the interview done, and if we have time, we just sit down and chew the fat. I don't like pulling now if we're pressed for time, that's different. I never really like pulling up somewhere, "Well, hey, how you doing? Let's do the interview." I like to kinda ease my way into it because that's something that, you don't want it to treat an interview like a transaction. You want it to be an enjoyable experience for them and the people you interview, because if it's not, then they're gonna be like, and you kinda have to build and earn their trust.
Mhm.
Because not everybody if you're looked upon as a journalist that is untrustworthy and you just don't feel comfortable around them, you're not gonna get interviews. But if you are earn their trust and build trust and relationships, because it's all about relationships. It's kinda like what Frank Beamer said. Frank Beamer, the former legendary head football coach of Virginia Tech, said the key to anything in life is relationships, building trust. Because if you don't have that, you don't have anything because no one's going to want to come to you and believe and trust you. So that's really the biggest thing. I've always wanted to build great relationships with people.
I asked you about you talked about making the sausage earlier. I wanna talk about that a little bit just on Friday nights. I mean, you do the show obviously and, at what, 11:15. How
No,
much
not
goes
11:15, not 11:15.
what is it?
Do it 10:30.
10:30. Oh gosh, okay.
So we do it 10:30 on the CW, and of course, Fox they air college football, college sports. So then the Blitz that airs at 10:30 on CW,
Okay.
that will air after the Friday night college sports or football. So we've done that before, but yeah, it's 10:30 on CW, and right after sports, college sports on Fox because they, like I said, they turn. Which, by the way, and not to be that guy, I've never been a fan of college sports on a Friday. I think Fridays are sacred for high school football,
Yeah.
like Ohio State and Michigan. And the SEC, they said we will not play on Fridays, which I can respect that. So I've never been a fan of college football on Fridays because it takes away from that. So, in full disclosure, I'm not a fan of it, and I would tell anybody that, to be honest.
BG, you had something?
Oh, what I was gonna say was y'all didn't know I had to disappear. I had to go back and get on the telephone. This StreamYard thing just kills me sometimes. But Jermaine, I was gonna ask you,
When you say,
you
are you
know,
doing it off your phone? Are you doing it off your
I
phone?
I am right now. I had to go to this
Okay,
because I'm
good luck.
terrible out here in the backwoods.
Yeah, where are you in the well, I guess you don't wanna disclose where you are.
No, no,
Just
I'm in Ringo. I don't mind telling you.
okay, you're
Yeah, I just have bad. I've actually got some reception here. I mean, well, I shouldn't mention the company. It's a company that's defined by an X. I don't know if anybody can I can say that or not, but anyway, I just have bad reception here for whatever reason. But what I was
in
going to ask you,
for a while.
uh,
In for a
yeah,
while.
there you go. That group. But kind of getting into the nuts and bolts of Jermaine. Every once in a while, we do an interview or we meet with a person that, hey man, I really did a great job on that, or I really stood out on this. Is there an interview or is there any a particular time that you can say, you can brush off your shoulder and say, man, I really did a great job on this? Is there any particular time that you've stood out in your mind?
I've done so many, I couldn't even remember, but I mean, you interview certain people, and sometimes you'll interview someone and you have a perspective of them going in, but then when you leave, like, "That's not who I thought they were." I'm not gonna mention names, but there a lot of times, I will say this, probably the most open are your high school coaches, because I will say this, I could call a high school coach today and say, "Hey, can we do an interview in 2 hours?" And they'll make it happen. I wouldn't like doing that to them because that's it, but they say, "Hey, get what you need, stay at practice, get whatever you want." So, high schools are more adaptable. As you get to the colleges, and it's not a knock against them, I mean, you have to do it on their time. So, if they wanna do it at this time, we gotta do it at this time, even though it might not be convenient for us, but we'll do it at this time. And that's just how it is. I mean, same with pros, and the biggest thing is that, when it comes to hiring college and pro, that's a whole different interview. It's not like you don't change your interview style, but it's a different interview because a lot of times journalists will mess it up for the next batch. Like, so if you have a coach that had a bad experience with, this media member, it taints them against other, good intention media members. And a lot of times bad journalists and bad media members make it hard for the ones who are not trying to do a bad job or not trying to be disrespectful. So I've firmly believed that that's what the case is, and I just never understood that I got you moments. I just not I don't like that. I just if you're trying to get clicks or you're trying to get people to read your article or you're trying to watch your show, it's just doesn't do it. Now, I will say this, do I like reporting negative stories? No, we have to do it. I mean, again, we live in a world where, hey, if such and such happens to such and such and this happens, we have to report it. But I'm a firm believer in, everybody has their right to say and do what they want, but there's gonna be consequences. So I'm I'm not the and again, I'm not a huge fan of you know, the opinionated shows. I think those are just it's opinion. And this is not only, a lot again, that's where the lines are blurred because you have people who will watch it thinking they're journalists. A lot of these people who do it, whether it's in news and sports, aren't journalists.
Right.
They watch their stuff and they just give their opinion and they think, "Oh, well, that's the opinion." And you gotta be careful. And I tell this again to everybody: be careful what you watch, because not everybody tells the truth. Not everybody gives you facts. They base what they say on opinion, but they make the opinion like it is fact. And that's the reason why I'm very careful when I give information out. I make sure it is double check, triple check, quadruple check because I don't want to give out bad information. I think when you do that, it messes with your credibility because that way people can't trust you to come watch your show or do whatever they need to do. So that's really where it is. And I would say this to anybody in the industry: credibility is so important. If you're credible, people will watch you and listen to you. If you're not, they're not going to.
Well, I know we got to get you out of here in just a few minutes, but let me turn that question around just a second. What's the biggest blooper reel for Jermaine Farrell?
Man, yeah, it's probably when I first started. If you saw when I first started, you'd be like, "Gosh, what is he still doing TV today?" But you know what you don't know, and I've done stuff on the air. You'd be like if the prompter wasn't rolling in the right place, or a camera movement will happen or something like that, or you misspeak. You say something you're not supposed to say, not a curse word, but if you misspeak, that's the wonderful thing. Or if you're just cracking up, you're laughing uncontrollably. Let's say something happened during the break and they bring you back up. You're like, oh yeah, he's cracking up. So that's really the thing is I mean, I can't recall a blooper. And if there is a blooper out there, it's probably not out there. But yeah, it's there's things happen. You just have to know what you're doing with it.
Well, I can speak to that personally because we interviewed Coach Scott Abel down at Rice University, and I had his first year totally wrong, and I asked him point blank, "How did you feel after that first win, being carried off the field, blah blah blah, and whatever year it was?" And he was like, "Guess what? I won't there that year." So I was like, "Okay, well, he just hadn't got his first win in." So anyway, but no,
Well,
I know that.
I'll tell you this, and I'm not going to mention their names, but so I was doing an interview with this famous singer, and again, I'm not going to mention names, and so I said, "So, being a part of this musical family's gotta be neat." And she said, "Well, first of all, I'm divorced from that family, and I'm not." Yeah. And I'm like, "Well, it's on the bio. Didn't say she was divorced." She said, "Well, you said no." I said, "Well, there's nowhere that said you were divorced." Plus, she was still wearing a wedding ring and all that, so I didn't know she was divorced. Maybe I don't know. Maybe she liked the jewelry, I don't know. But, yes, and then right then and there and then her ego got big, and I was like, "Eh." But like I said, there are people like I said, it's a perception, like, you'll interview somebody, and you're thinking, "Okay, I've heard all this," but then when you get and it could go the other way too. There's many times I've interviewed people that I thought, "Oh, they were cool to interview," but then after it's like
Yeah.
and vice versa. There are people you've gone in, you thought they were gonna be like this, and then they're, like, really nice. So, it's I always you always have to go in there with an open mind because you never know. I mean,
Well,
that's the thing. I mean, because it's all about perception,
right.
It's because a lot of times people think perception is reality, and that's not really the case.
Well, I know looking at, the things that you've covered, I mean, basketball, football, baseball, anything and everything. Just something, question is, what's something that you possibly have not covered that you would like to cover at some point in time?
Mm. You talking about an event or sports or like
Event, it doesn't even have to be sports, anything that you would that you have the interest in that you would like to cover at some point in time.
I mean
That wasn't supposed to be a gotcha moment either, okay?
I know that. No, I know that. Well, it's interesting you say I mean, I've covered so many big events, but the thing is they're almost all the same because it's like there's a lot of work and people don't realize like, I covered the first college football playoff national championship game in Arlington, Texas, and that was a lot of work. But I will say this, and this is a moment that I tell all the youngins. So I went up, I covered, and it was a magical year again. UVA winning the national championship in men's basketball. And I go up to Minneapolis. I drove from Roanoke to Minneapolis, and people say, "You're nuts." I said, "Hey, I wanted my gear. I needed a unit. I needed the." And they said they could have flown me. So I stopped in Indianapolis half and I did a little interview with our sister station. And then I drive me so it's like 7 hours from Roanoke to Indianapolis, but then it's like 8 hours from Indianapolis to Minneapolis. And the weather was chilly, it wasn't cold. But so then we got a chance to be on the Final Four court. I took shots on that floor. I made one. I banked one in. Ugliest shot in the world, but I banked it in. And I took pictures with the championship trophy with a basketball. And so once the arena emptied out because it was media day, and so it's the Friday before all the games, and they had a spotlight on the court, and I'm looking at this, and so I took time to myself to say, "Hey, I'm covering the Final Four. I'm covering this." And I tell everybody all the time, take time to enjoy it. Enjoy the moment that you get to cover these big events because you don't never know if you're gonna get back to cover another one. I don't know. I mean, and then, in Dallas, we covered Virginia Tech women in the Final Four. So I've covered 2 Final Fours, a men and a women. They played at American Airlines Arena, and during that weekend, you had a Taylor Swift concert. You had Rangers baseball, and you had the XFL or was it the USFL, wherever it was in Arlington. So all that was going on in Dallas that weekend. But thank God we weren't in Arlington because the Final Four was in Dallas. Because could you imagine over in Arlington, you have two Taylor Swift concerts going on at Jerry's house. You have XFL football because they played at the old Ranger Stadium, and then you also have Rangers opening weekend. All that in that whole complex, and I know traffic was nuts. So, but yeah, I mean, I think a bit. I guess it'd be neat to cover an Olympics because that's going to be in LA, which is two years from today is when the summer games start. By the way, 2 years from today, which is
Wow.
feel like. And what's neat is what they've done with the Olympics now. You have an Olympics every other year. It used to be 92 is the last year that the winter and summer games are the same year. So now they switched up to where every other year you have a Winter Olympics or you have the Summer Olympics. And I'm more partial to the Summer Olympics than the Winter Olympics myself. Probably Olympics, a Super Bowl would be cool to cover.
Right.
I've covered a Major League Baseball All-Star game. I've covered I mean, it'd be maybe the NBA finals would be neat. So, but I've covered a college football championship game, a basketball championship, college basketball championship game, and those are big events because that's media from everywhere. And the media, I will tell this, the media that comes to these events, they're from everywhere, and you see people that you don't see on TV. And I thought it was neat to see some of these people. Like we covered the college football playoff championship game, we had a little pod inside the stadium, and right beside us was WFAA. They were ABC affiliate in Dallas. And who walks in beside us is Jimmy Kimmel and Guillermo. And Jimmy Kimmel said, "Hey, how you doing? How you doing?" And I'm like, "Oh, how you doing, Jimmy?" I mean, but he was a down to earth celebrity, and a lot of celebrities are down to earth. Not all of them are, prima
Right.
donna egomaniacs, but a lot of, I mean, he was just down to earth, very nice. And he said, "Yeah, can I jump on with y'all?" And I said, we couldn't have him on because we were NBC affiliate and that wouldn't have looked good, but it was with Nexstar. But yes, I just, again, big events take time to enjoy it. I mean, I've covered a lot of state championship games. I've covered a lot of championships and seeing teams win. And it's the neatest thing in the world to see a team you cover win like when we go cover state championship games and we see our local teams win, it's the neatest thing in the world. But when we see them lose, you feel for them because we've covered them all year. And, like this past year, Glenville was rocking and rolling, and then they ran into a buzzsaw in the championship game. And, Coach Clifford and his crew, they do a great job over there. And really, I covered Salem winning a championship in football. But then the last 2 years, it was gut wrenching to see them lose back to back years in state championship game. Those girls work hard, and it was just hard for them to lose. Seeing Patrick Henry lose in the state championship game in basketball a couple years ago, and he had a big lead in the second half, and the other team came back and won. And so you hurt for those teams because then you're writing
Yep.
story. It's like, hey, these teams are doing well. So, but probably some of the most unlikely state championships. I mean, it was like back to back years, Northside and then Chrisburg. They both won softball championships. I mean, probably a coach and a team, when you look at state championships in sports, I mean, first of all, you gotta look at the Blacksburg boys soccer team. 14 state championships.
Crazy.
14 or 15, I lose track, but they have more than anyone else, you know. And it was their first state championships was 2018, and Shelley Blumenthal down there, he rocks the scene. He does but probably Salem, I think forensics and debate, VHSL, I think they have like 120 in a row or something like that. I mean, they have a little trophy case just for that. Because honestly, when you think of Salem's got, they got I want to say 10 or 12 state championships in football, but it pales in comparison to that forensics team over there, which it's neat because they've had Salem with football. They've won it in different ways. I mean, Coach Holter and Coach Magenbauer and Coach Willis White, who's the guy, and over so those three guys have won a state championship. And,
Well,
so there's a lot of success out there, a lot of successful programs, and we love seeing them all do well, and we love seeing them do it. And, obviously this fall we'll have that with the Hardy's Friday Night Blitz, and we'll be covering them all.
well, just to let you know, if when LA pops up, if you need help, District 2 can join you on that trip West Coast. Okay, just let We'll make ourselves available. I promise
Yeah,
you. I promise you.
I'm probably on the short end of the stick because next door has a lot of people out there, so we'll be on the short end of.
My last question for you, Jermaine, is this. I know that on June 30th, 2025, and then on May 10th, 2026, I'm sure it's something that you never sought out. I believe me, I believe that about you. I'm sure you're that humble. But how much did it mean to you to be presented? And I guess I think it was Mike Tirico that presented you this. I think it looked like him from my
It
standpoint.
was.
The
It was.
2024 Virginia Sportscaster of the Year, and then to turn around in May of 26 to receive the NAACP Roanoke Media Award. How much does that mean to you?
The National Sports Media Association Award, and Dave Gorin does a tremendous job down there with that whole organization. They you kind of put them in two different buckets. The NSMA award, the Sportscaster Year Award, that's voted on by your peers. So your peers look at you and they say, "There you go. First of all, you're nominated and all that." I've been nominated 3 times. So to win it the third time, you get a call, and they say, "Hey, we're giving you the award." And I was like, "Wow!" I was blown away. And because you don't do this for the awards. I think if you're in this business to get awards, now some do. That's their motivation. Nothing wrong with it. That's not my motivation. My daily award is like when you have someone say they love your work. At the Hokie Club. They were telling me last night. We were interviewing James Franklin and all of them, and they said we appreciate your coverage. We appreciate what you do, and those are the things that are good. The NAACP award, that is something that's special because that was an award. Obviously, they look at what you've done in the community and the media, and that's something that they took time out to choose me, and that's a blessing. And I'm proud and humbled that they would consider me because any award that you receive, you never take it lightly, and it's a blessing when you can get an award. And I've always looked upon those awards as like, wow, well, thank you. I appreciate it. This is a blessing. Anyone could have got those honors, but when you get them, you take it and you're thankful and you're humble. And to get those honors and every honor I've gotten, I'm thankful for that. And I think it's a blessing. And I think that you get them and you're thankful because they didn't have to do that. The NAACP didn't have to. They could have picked any media member and they said, "Hey, Jermaine, we want to honor you." So that was really a neat thing, and all these honors are special, and I appreciate it. I'm thankful because it goes to show that you're making a difference in the community. To be recognized for what you're doing is pretty neat.
Well, I want to let you know, and, when we talked the other day on the phone, I promised you'd be out of here between 30 and 45 minutes. We're
Man.
getting ready to go into 55 minutes now, and I'm
Is
sorry,
that a
but
record? Is that a record?
it's getting close. But
What's the,
and
what's,
I'm gonna apologize
what's the record?
but yeah, it's right at an hour. It's a little over an hour, about an hour and 5 minutes.
Oh, can we go? Can we break the record?
Let's
We
do
can
it.
keep going. We can keep going all. I mean, you have a story that just to me just amazes me. But I want to tell you something else, though. Me and my sons, we cover a lot of games and stuff, and we see WFXR at the ball games. I forget the young lady's name who I see quite a bit.
Oh,
You'll have to help me.
Miriam Chamberlain.
Your folks, and this is not just because you're here, but because we see others, doing interviews, post game interviews, what have you, with players and coaches. Your folks are so professional and they conduct the best interviews. And I just wanted to let you know that. And they it's almost like they've honed their skills in on this, and that you must have rubbed off on them somehow, some way.
Well, first of all, I appreciate you saying that. First of all, it's already in them. They already do a great job. And I'm very proud of our sports department here. And one thing we do take it seriously. It's very important to dedicate the coverage, the local coverage. And, I don't, unless it's a major national story, I typically don't like running national stories. I don't think that's important. I think the importance is local. You can get the national stuff anywhere, but it's the local, 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 local. Get the local. Because if you don't get the local, that's not going to work. So I'm a firm believer in that. It's always about being local. Get the story local. And like I said, we we take time, we do that, and it's an honor, and we're appreciative of all the compliments we get because, like I said, if it's a daily award. Someone can take some out what we said or what we've done. That's really important. So I'm a firm believer in that. So
Well, I was at
thank you for the kind words, Big G and Little G, as they say.
Well, I was at the just to give you an examples, I was at the Jefferson Forest slash GW regional championship game, and
Oh, yeah, that
that
was
young lady, yeah, that young lady, she commanded the field after the game. I mean, she was just spot on with everything, and like I said, it was as professional as I've ever seen. She was not going to wait for everybody else to do their thing. She did her thing and got it done. So I just want to let you know, and it was done professionally. So that's what I wanted to let you know that. But I
I
just
got
want
something
to
to ask
invite everybody.
I
What's
got
that?
you guys. So basically, you guys have a big net too. I mean, you cover a lot of stuff. Are y'all still broadcasting games, or y'all still kind of?
No, I mean, we actually just go to the games, kinda do some post-game interviews and stuff like that, might take some highlights on Instagram, stuff like that, but as far as broadcasting, we won't. We'll let
That's
the other
fine.
guys do that one.
We like,
But we can hey, we can carry a WFX camera, though, FXR camera, though, if we need to. Okay, just believe me.
everybody wants to carry the camera, but don't want
Yeah,
to work, right? They just
but
want to be seen and not heard.
but
But
I invite and encourage everyone, that we reach out to please watch WFXR. Not just the sports, but the newscast and everything. But Jermaine, you guys are spot on, and you're right there. You're in the midst of everything, and everything, like you said earlier. You say you're current. You are current, and you're always on point. So I just want to let you guys know that it's always done professionally, and I enjoy it. I mean, I, I don't want to say anything negative about especially the other Friday night things. I kind of watch some of the polls and stuff like that, but I have to watch you guys because I can't watch some of those other guys, and it's just in
well,
my
I
in
will
my
I will say this, and I appreciate the kind words, but one thing about the other stations in the market, they work hard too. They bust their
yeah,
butt. They do a strong job too. I mean, it's a lot of work. It doesn't matter
yeah,
where station you are, and and I appreciate your kind words. I'm not diminishing what you're saying,
right, right,
but I do know all the other guys in the market, and they do a good job, and it's hard work. I mean, it doesn't matter where you are, and so you know, I know it probably goes against the grain of your competition, but I will give them credit because, like I said, they're good people. Eric Johnson over at WSL, Dave Walls over at BDNJ, and Ariel Schaefer, who's now at WSCT. They all do good work, and it's an honor to be in this market. And then like I said, growing up, I mean, it was the Dennis Carters, the Greg Roberts, the Mike Stevens, the Roy Stanleys, the Dave Rosses. Those guys. And then, like I said, like last night, I met Les Miller for the first time, and you know they do a lot of good work. Even before that, you had John Apicello, and you have Travis Wells.
yep,
They did great work, and then even at our station, we've had sports people move on. David de Guzman and Kevin E. Martin and Samantha Waddell. We had a lot of strong sports people in this market that have gone on and have done other great things. So this has been a proving ground, a hotbed of sports broadcasting journalism talent, and they all have done a good job. And growing up watching them, and then seeing little kids come up to me and say, "Hey, Jermaine, I want to do what you're doing," and so I love mentoring. I love talking to the youngins in the business. I mean, little G, he's a youngin. It looks like because
it is, he is.
Big G is Big G, but
I,
but
I'm
it's
long in the
funny.
tooth.
Do you realize, like, on your name, you got Big G, but G is lowercase, and then Big
Well,
G, Gregory, is capitalized. So shouldn't that have been flipped a little bit there?
listen, I told you to begin with, this dude's a czar. He determines all this stuff. He writes all this stuff. And I kind of noticed that too, but I just have to take my place, Jermaine. He's kind of like the director of this thing. But
Well, you
I
don't have
won't.
input then, do you?
Yeah, exactly. I wanted to date myself real quick. You mentioned a name from the past, and I don't know how well you knew him or know him, but Dennis Carter was my guy in 1985 when I was a senior at GW playing baseball. He was our newspaper slash TV guy at the time, and love Dennis, and he's kind of the one that kind of spurred me on to attempt, and I'm saying attempt with a capital A, to attend the University of Tennessee out in Knoxville to become a radio TV broadcaster, which
Wow.
failed miserably. And I wound up DCCing it and Avering it and wound up in business development sales. So just didn't never quite be there. So I'm living my second life now.
Well, the thing is Dennis Carter, and no one has ever said a bad word about Dennis Carter, and that's the thing. Dennis Carter is one of the nicest, most humble people out there, and when I worked at Channel 13, I got to work with Dennis a little bit there, and there was a I think we took a group picture. I think at the time it was myself, it was John Appicello, Travis Wells, and Dennis Carter. We all took a group picture. I mean, all sports directors. It's rare for all of us to be at one spot, and we took it. And Dennis Carter, I mean, you talk about a class act. I mean, he is a class act, and you know, nothing but respect and love for him. And he's in the Hall of Fame down at the Virginia Sports Hall of Fame, well deserved to have the career he's had. And when you think of sports pre on that side of and we're talking really, you know, talking about Danville area because he went to GW, and Danville and Lynchburg and all that. I mean, those are big shoes to fill when he retired. And the thing is, he nothing but class. Him and his wife, Regina, great people and all that. So when you mentioned that 1985, which is interesting because that was the flood of '85, and, yeah, but Dennis Carter, I mean, if you wanna hitch your wagon to somebody, he would be the guy. And the thing is that sometimes, you have to take a different path to get where you're going. Like, for instance, you wanted to do broadcasting, but you're doing it now. It's just in a different landscape because that's really where it's going. It's going with the podcast. It's going with the big G, little G thing. And that's the thing. See, the thing is, you have a nickname, so you put your nickname up. You didn't put your government name up. You went with Big G. And then obviously, you have Gregory Das, going with that, which is fine. Which actually, remember I told you how it threw me off. I said, "Wait a minute,
Yeah, yeah, that's right. That's
wait."
right. He did say that, Gregory. Yes.
That's what threw me off. I was like, "Okay, is this who
Two
I'm supposed?"
Gregories.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
All right, let's
Barely,
go for the hey,
barely related. It seems like.
let's go for the record, okay? I just thought of something. Let's go for the record.
Okay.
What would Jermaine Ferrell be doing right now if he was not into sports broadcasting?
I would be talking to District 2 Sports.
Get him a T-shirt, Gregory.
There you go. I actually, you know what? And I might still do this. I mean, I'm young enough. I'm 52, so I guess I'm young enough to do it. I wouldn't mind going into education, teaching broadcasting. And I know what's crazy is they want you to have a master's degree, which I think if you've been doing this forever, why put a master's? But anyway, that's the requirement. You have to have all that. But because sometimes life experiences are much better than having a degree in more cases than not. There many a person, they've been very successful and they've never went to college or never got a degree. And that's not I'm not knocking getting a degree, but life experiences, I mean, that's like the school of life, the school of hard knocks. So you have that.
How happy are you that there's 4 state championship games in Salem this year?
I tell you what, well, for us, it's easy for coverage because we don't have that far to go. We can just go right around the corner practically. I know what the VXSL is trying to do. The thing is, when you look at these state championship games, and first of all, when they've been at colleges like Liberty or Virginia Tech or Virginia or James Madison, any of these college stadiums are so huge. So, like, for instance, you could have 3,000. Like, well, case in point, let's use Liberty Christian for example. They played all their home games at Williams Stadium. Well, they might have a good crowd there, but you know it because it's 20,000 plus seats. So if you put 2,000 fans in a stadium that seats 20,000, it's not going to have that. But if you have it at a Salem Stadium seats nearly 10,000, it's not going to sound or as empty. So, and I think the VHSO wants to improve the experience. Now, of course, people are saying, is it fair? I think the biggest complaint that I've heard from coaches is the fact that the 3 and 4 are on Friday. and 1 and 2 are on Saturday, but they're gonna rotate that around. So it's kinda like what if you think with state basketball, they rotate those days. You might have some championship games on Thursday, then you might have some on Friday and Saturday. So they rotate them all around. So it's not like it's always gonna be on this day. Now, what that does is if you're in class 3 and class 4, normally your state semifinals on Saturday, but I can guarantee you they're gonna move those state semifinal games to Friday because they still want a week to prepare, and that's fine. So they do that. That's great. So we'll see what happens with that. But I can tell you that for a coverage standpoint, it's going to make our lives so much easier because we have it here. We don't have to now. Obviously, if we have Franklin County, Patrick Henry, or William Fleming in Class 5, which anything is possible. If they're playing in James Madison, we'll get them. But to have most of our schools, we only have 3 Class 5 schools. So, but and I think we have 18. We have 8. Our biggest classification is Class 3. We have 18 Class 3 schools in our viewing area. We have 7 Class 4. We have 16 Class 1 schools. No, I take it back. I think we have like 16 or 17 Class 2 and
Wow.
7 1. But so overall in our viewing area, and again, I know your viewing area is different than our viewing area, but we have 61 high schools that we cover.
Wow.
And that I'm not adding in the ones that have basketball down the line. That makes it, like 65, 66. But we
Right.
have 61 of our high schools play football. And that now do we get to every one of those schools on a Friday? No, it's impossible because if you think just logistically, we would probably need 2 hours to cover all of it, and we would
Yep.
need a whole small army.
Yep.
So we don't get to every game, and we don't try to. You can't do it. But on a given Friday night, we try to get between 8 to 10 games highlights. I mean, we have the scores and all that, but it's logistically impossible to get to all the games.
Logistically impossible unless you got District 2, Jermaine. That's all. Okay.
Well, if you guys get to every game, I give it up to you too.
So let me tell you this. I told Gregory I was going to tell you this, but I know not every newscast, every sportscast is full, full with air or with whatever stories or whatever. And I know you come to a time where there's a lull in the action, and you're looking for a story. Okay, you're just looking. You know, this wouldn't be a bad one. I just wanted to tell you, District 2 wouldn't be a bad one to help, put some smiles on some people's faces. They probably would get a lot of laughs out of it. So, if y'all ever need anything to, complete some airtime, just let us know. We'll make ourselves available.
You know what? What's the old saying? You got to shoot your shot. Never will.
There you go.
Shoot your shot.
We're bashful here. You can tell, can't you?
I can see the shyness is radiating. So,
Yeah.
how did you two link up?
Well, he's my son, so
That's what I'm saying. How did y'all link up to come up with the idea? Basically, I didn't phrase the question properly.
all right. Well, but what I was going to say.
How'd y'all come up with this?
Well, see, what I was going to lead into was Gregory is my son, and we have his younger brother, and they used to have a friend that they started this podcast with. I can't name him right now, but Jermaine, this is just like apples and oranges right now between the three of us and them back in the past. I mean, I had to come out of the doldrums to move them forward. You know what I'm saying? If you want to come out of the doldrums, just call Big G. He'll help you. Because I'm the controversial one. I'm the one that has no personality. I don't know. I don't know what to tell you.
The real story is that they held me against my will to bring this back. So I stopped doing it in 2020. I was like, we did this for a year. I'm good. I'm still in Jacksonville, Florida. And they're like, no, let's get it back going. Let's do it again. And let's cover some more sports. And it's like, all right, well, let's do it. So we've been doing it strong for the past 2 years, really, of interviews, pretty much doing the podcast side of interviewing coaches and players around the area. And of course, they got out to some games throughout the seasons. And I'm back in Virginia now, so I'm trying to get out here and see some things as well. And hopefully, just kind of promote it a little bit better and get some more things out there in action.
And Jermaine, if I can be serious for just a second, and I told them that if we were going to do this we needed to have a kind of a mission statement, if you will. And our mission here with this podcast, well, yeah, of course we want to have fun and, shoot the bit and, chew it up a little bit and have a good time and invite people along the way. But our mission here was to hone in or focus in on local talent. I don't care if you're male or female, and get some kind of exposure to them and help them to, if they want to continue, you want to help them get to that next level. I don't care if you want to go play D1, if you want to play D2, play D3, junior college, what have you. That's our mission in life, basically, for this podcast. I mean, Gregory and Devin put together a recruiting board for all the sports that we cover. And we put this out in a mass text to all the coaches of basketball and football, basically. And, if we find some baseball or softball folks, we try to reach out to them as well. But that was our mission, was to try to help these people continue on, not only with sports, but with education.
Well, I tell you what, you guys are doing a good job with that, and I think that's really important. Again, you want to be a service. You don't want to be, not doing what you need to do. So kudos to what you guys do, and your show is fantastic. And I appreciate you guys giving me the opportunity to be on your show. Like I said, you could have picked anybody, and it took too long. Like, what took so long? But it's also a joy and honor and a privilege to be on the show because, like I said, I don't take these invitations lightly, and I know you guys could have asked anybody. So to have me on your show, it's greatly appreciated.
Well, no, we can't thank you enough. And we thank you for your service, not only for your military, but through what you're doing on TV as well. And your coverage is spot on.
Yeah, you probably need to improve that internet because it sounded very. Using a big G. Hey, he needs 10G or whatever you need.
I've tried. I told him to get
You're right.
Starlink. Get the Starlink.
He's using that. He's using dial-up or something.
He is. Oh, Mr. I can't thank you enough for coming on.
I need a direct link to WFXR. I need the WFXR truck right here beside me.
We're hanging in. I don't know if ours is like Baby G over there, but
did anything come out just a minute ago?
What's that now?
Did anything come out just now?
It was very gibberish, but it worked. We got the gist of it.
Yeah.
Okay. I appreciate your service, military-wise, and on the sportscast. Okay, I tried to do it quick that time.
That sounded clear.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
I think we broke the record, didn't we?
Yes, sir. Yes, we did.
We absolutely by 10 minutes.
Yeah, and a lot of it was stuff that had I not blabbed so much, we wouldn't have broke the record.
We need you in our community. That's for sure.
Well, I appreciate y'all. Y'all have a blessed day again. Thank you so much for having me on your show.
Thank you, Sparrow.
Thank you.